as we speak. And we're live.
Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the IFW committee. I'm Senator Jim Dill, Senate Chair, and we have several work sessions and language reviews today on 4 or 5 bills that we'll get to in a minute. But first, we'll start out with introductions, and I'll start with Representative Alley.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Alley from the Beals area. And just for the record, we've had a fifth 2.5 whatever you call them, man. They rise up and down in the ocean now.
Oh.
So we've had 5 of them in the last month. And anyway, I'll get back to the hand here. We've got 13 communities that I work with, and that's about it.
Thank you. Representative Neto.
Good morning, Senator Dill. Kathy Neto. I represent District 78, which covers all of Winslow and a small portion of Benton.
Representative Hepler.
Well, good morning. I'm Allison Hepler. I'm using a loaner laptop from the University of Maine at Farmington, so I'm not responsible for any of the glitches. I represent the towns of Aroustic, Georgetown, Phippsburg, Woolwich, which is where I live, Dresden, and a small part of Richmond.
Representative Lyford.
Yes, good morning. Peter Lyford, District 129, which is Clifton, Eddington, Holden, Northborough, and Vesey.
Representative Mason.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Dill. I'm Rick Mason, District 56 for the great folks of Lisbon.
Representative Danny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, folks. Danny Martin, House 150, located in northern Worcester County.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Russ Black from Wilton, representing Senate District 17, which is all of Franklin County, 4 towns in Kennebec, Belgrade, Mount Vernon, Vienna, and Fayette.
Representative Landry.
Good morning, Scott Landry. I live in Farmington, and I represent Farmington and New Sharon, District 113.
Representative Terrio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Tim Terrio. I represent District 79, which is Albion, most of Benton, China, and Unity Plantation.
Representative Ordway.
Good morning, Senator. Good morning, everyone. I am Lester Ordway. I represent District 23, which is part of the great town of Standish.
And I am Jim Dill. As I mentioned, I am the senator in District number 5, Northern Penobscot County. Our clerk is Linda LaCroix, and our analyst is where are we? Julia McDonald up in the corner on my screen. And with that, we will go ahead and start our meeting today. The first thing I want to bring up, I've heard some discussions around Sunday hunting, and we have a bill that a committee bill that we have moved forward. And the only thing I would say our option, if anybody wants an option at the moment, is a reconsideration. So I would just mention that to the committee. If anybody cares to do anything at the moment, they can. Seeing none, then we will move on to our regular work sessions that are scheduled. And the first one is LD 1951, an act related to hunting dogs and civil trespass. Julia.
Great, thank you, Senator Dill. I'll go ahead and pull up the language. Sorry, just give me 1 second. or a few seconds. I apologize. All right, I'm going to start again. I don't know why that isn't showing up. I apologize. Oh, there it is. Okay. Great. So I'll start here with the summary. Is everyone able to see this?
Yep.
Great. So we did have our public hearing on this. This began as a committee bill. It's now LD 1951. We can read through the summary if that's helpful. I know we have before in committee. So it requires a person to obtain a permit to train or hunt on a bear, coyote, bobcat, fox, or raccoon with a dog. It exempts from the permit requirement a person with a youth hunting license and persons hunting with a guide. And it provides a penalty scheme for failure to have a permit. It requires a functioning GPS system tracker for dog collars in addition to the already standing requirements for collaring hunting dogs. And it requires also for hunting, in addition to training, for that global positioning tracking system to be on the dog. You cannot hunt fox or raccoon with more than 6 dogs. And it prohibits specific kinds of trespassing for turning a hunting dog loose. One is onto that posted land, and the other is if the person has noticed that they are not wanted on that land. And it also provides a penalty scheme for doing so.
Questions for Julia? Representative Lightfoot.
Thank you, Senator. Why would we exclude use? I mean, isn't that a great training tool for use to go up and meet landowners and ask for permission?
Oh, Representative Lightfoot, thank you. It's youth do not require a permit, so they are able to hunt without one, so they can hunt with their parent or whatever situation that may be.
Thank you.
Representative Ordway.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Julia, could you scroll to the part where it mentioned guides? I'll tell you where I'm going. I was under the impression that there was going to be a provision in here for someone that hunts with a guide and brings their own dogs, and that wording doesn't seem to match up to me for that.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. I'm also not seeing it. So we can go through that.
Also, I can't control this. My mouse is moving like hell and it can't move the screen.
I know. Let's see. There we go. Sorry about that. So this is the section. Is this the section that you have concerns about?
We had talked about if a client brought his own dogs to hunt with a guide. And it seems like we're holding the guide responsible for those dogs. And I thought we had come up with some language to handle that situation. It looks like here that the client would be responsible, but the guide would. And the guide wouldn't be in control of those dogs, really.
Because the permit is with the guide as opposed to, right, I see what you're saying there. Open to direction from the committee.
Okay, so this says that if you are hunting a person who has got their own dogs, is the way I see it, under the supervision but it's a licensed guide, so it would appear, Representative Ordway, that to me, it sounds like the guide is responsible there. Is that the way you're reading that?
Yeah, yes, it is, Senator. And I thought, I'm getting old and sometimes it all doesn't hang in there, but I thought we had discussed some portion of that.
Maybe
A guide wouldn't have control.
Tim is waving, lots of people waving frantically here, so I'll go to Representative Terrio first.
Yeah, if you would let Dan Scott in, he can address that. And he's got all the answers for every bit of that.
He's got all the answers. That's good to know that somebody does. So
Absolutely.
would you let in Colonel Scott, please, Linda?
He should be on his way in.
You may need a guide.
With the permit.
Colonel Scott, the answer man, welcome.
You're right. First time I've been accused of having all the answers and hopefully the last, but I do think I can shed some light on the conversation a little bit. That topic came up obviously at the public hearing and it wasn't discussed anymore. So I figured we'd wait till today. So the stakeholder group specifically discussed if a person hired a guide and was hunting in the presence of a guide, that they would not need the permit. So, I'm from the state of Connecticut and I hire a registered Maine guide to take me on a bear dog hunt. I'm going to, as a non-resident, there's a standing law, a current law that requires me to hunt in the presence of a guide anyway, a resident Maine guide. So my whole goal for the day is just to potentially shoot a bear out of a tree that's treed by dogs. And so we agreed to put the the stakeholder group suggested we put in the exception that if you're hunting in the presence of a guide, you do not need to have the permit, because in that case, the guide is a responsible party. Okay, so that's how the law is currently written. There's also currently a law on the books that says anyone hunting bears, any non-resident hunting bears with dogs, needs to employ a registered Maine guide and basically hunt in the presence of them. And that's whether they bring their own dogs or hunt with the guide's dogs. So that language that's in there would exclude all of those non-resident hunters that are hunting with the guide, even if they bring their own dogs. Now, Representative Ordway is correct. During the public hearing, one of the guides, so Mr. Parker, brought up that he suggested that if a person brings their own dogs along, they're kind of exempt from that exemption, that they do need the permit. So I guess my only comment around that would be, so that's where we're at. If you want to add language that if a person, say a non-resident, brings their own dogs with them, they have to hunt in the presence of a guide anyway, that they do need to get the permit, then that's up to the committee whether they want to do that or not. My only caution would be we're getting into an exception to the exception. And that's why Title 12 gets confusing. So it may be easier to include everyone to have the permit, whether you have dogs or not, and you're hunting with a guide or not, or no one hunting with a guide, directly hunting with a guide in their presence needs to have a permit. But that's where it's at. The original stakeholder discussions and the report that we filed was that anyone hunting in the presence of a guide did not need to have the permit. On Monday, during the public hearing, it was suggested that maybe if a person is hunting in the presence of a guide and brings their own dogs, they should have to have it.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Representative Ordway? And do we need to do something here?
No. I absolutely respect the Colonel's explanation.
Okay, very good.
I just thought we had discussed it and didn't see it there. I wasn't aware that there was an exception to the exception.
Okay. Senator Black.
That was my question too, because I'd had a couple calls from stakeholders member, and they were concerned that you know, their concern was that if you have dogs and you bring them in, which, you know, you have control over, even if you're hunting in the presence of guide, you probably should have that permit also. You know, they're not the main guides, you know, state of Maine guides dogs, you know, and he's not familiar with them and that kind of stuff. So that was a concern that I had a couple calls on that yesterday after the public hearing, that they thought, and Mr. Parker was one of them, and he was, you know, he said that he was concerned that that if you have own dogs and you come in from out of state, you should have to have the permit also.
So is that kind of addressed back to what Colonel Scott just said, Senator Black? So he might want to respond to that. Colonel Scott, do you want to respond to that?
And Senator, that's absolutely a legitimate concern. If somebody brings their dogs from the outside, very possibly the committee may want to require them to obtain this permit and kind of put them responsible for their own dogs. And that's fine. I would just then consider whether you still want to have an exception to the person who comes and doesn't have their own dogs. Because again, we're getting into, you know, subparagraph. But no, that is a very legitimate concern. If I'm a guide and somebody comes from out of state and brings their own dogs with them, they are more in control of them than I am. It's their dogs. It's just, do we want to have multiple exceptions? And you know, we can work with it either way, but it does get complex when some people are required to have a permit and some are not, who are all engaged in the hunt. I didn't want to think we were leaning one way or another. It's just we caution when we get a lot of exceptions, but there's definitely legitimate concern that Mr. Parker brought up the other day regarding, you know, somebody from South Carolina bringing in their own dogs.
Representative Lyford.
Thank you, Senator. Somebody from South Carolina bringing their own dogs, who is a registered Maine guide, still has to hire a Maine guide, and that Maine guide is responsible, correct, Colonel?
No, a non-resident who's a registered Maine guide does not, in order to hunt, does not have to hunt in the presence of a registered Maine guide. But if they're going to guide people, they can only guide residents. That's exactly my example of when you get into exceptions of the exceptions of the exceptions, it gets confusing. That's one of the most confusing bits of language in Title 12 is around non-residents and guides. So a non-resident guide, a non-resident registered Maine guide does not have to comply with, has to hire a resident Maine guide if they want to hunt on their own. But if they're going to be guiding people, they can only guide residents, because a non-resident has to hunt with a resident Maine guide. You're welcome.
That's a good reminder for everybody to keep themselves muted if they're not called upon to speak. Representative Terrio.
Thank you. I'm just bringing the part that we can hold Maine guides accountable way more than we can an out-of-stater, and that was why we went with this way. It's putting more pressure on a Maine guide to, you know, if they have dogs that they can't control, then maybe they're not going to take them hunting, you know. But we have a lot more control over a Maine guide than we do over an out-of-stater.
Senator Black.
Thank you. And I guess that does get to the crux of the problem. Nobody is going to be bringing in dogs and hunting with them unless they're under the direct supervision of a Maine guide, whether they're out-of-state Maine guide or a Maine guide, resident Maine guide. Am I clear on that?
I see some nods. So
yes.
Other questions?
Is it more confusing, like Colonel Scott said, to have two separate sets of rules here? I would think everybody bringing dogs, controlling dogs should have a permit. Make any sense?
You know, you don't hear everybody jumping on it, so.
No, I guess nobody likes that. I quit.
Representative Hepler. You muted the representative.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, this is my loaner laptop. So this is a question unrelated, it's more of a comment unrelated to the hunting, the non-resident resident thing. And I think it's been answered. Somebody had reached out to me last night, wanted to make sure that it was a GPS collar and not something that was attached with cell phones. He's had experiences with cell phones where the dog can be like 50 feet in front of him, and he can't, it doesn't work. So the GPS part seems to be more accurate.
Okay, Representative Terrio.
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of the mandatory collars because they all have collars anyways. I don't think the intent that I remember during the stakeholders group was to make sure that to make it mandatory. So I've heard some pushback on that. So I'd like to know where that came from as far as getting in the bill. Did I miss something? Because I don't remember that being a mandatory piece.
Perhaps we can call on Don Kleiner on some of the guide stuff here. Don, are you there?
I'm here, Senator, and I too am on a different machine this morning, so a little bit at a loss. On the dog piece, I think who has the permit is basically who do we, at the end of the day, want to hold responsible for those dogs being on the wrong property. The way it's currently written, it would reside with the guide, which I think was the intent of the stakeholders group. And the question we're asking as a guides association is, do you want that responsibility to reside there, or do you want it to reside with the hound owner? It's a down in the weeds question. Colonel Scott is exactly correct in that it adds complication, but this is a straight up question and the time to ask it. I'm sorry, Senator, I lost the second part of what I was supposed to talk about.
well, certainly I can see both sides of it. If somebody brings in dogs from out of state, I mean, they're their dogs and they probably have more control of it. But if I come to you as a guide, you're the one that knows the area and what's what and who's landowners, and let's not hunt over here because there's a problem with an issue here. So I can see both sides of it, but to me it sounds like that if the guide is taking you on, it's just like if you take me moose hunting and you take me to the wrong zone and we shoot a moose, we're probably both responsible there, I'm guessing. But I would put more blame on the guide personally, saying, what the heck did you do? Why did you take me to the wrong zone?
Correct. Yeah. Again, because of the dogs being something, it's a little different in a moose hunt because you and I would be standing theoretically together.
Right.
And we would know, but the dog, again, hunts away from the hunters at some level. So it's a little bit different here. There's a nuance.
Right. And I understand that angle of it, but I'm just,
Yeah, no,
trying to figure out how do we resolve who's ultimately responsible here.
Right. And I know in almost every other instance, I've argued that the guide would be the ultimately responsible individual. But just, I think asking the honest question, who do you want to hold responsible here?
Okay.
There was a B part, Senator, but I don't remember. Can you help me?
I don't remember what the B part. Representative Hepler's question, perhaps.
No, it was mine. It was the collars.
Oh, the collars.
So I think in my conversations with houndsmen, the collars are the reality today. And having run one of these collars for now a number of years, yeah, they're expensive, but dogs are expensive and it's a relative thing. I know just personal anecdote that maybe doesn't fit here, but I didn't run one on bird dogs when they cost about $1,000. When the price of bird dogs went to $5,000, that $800 collar made a ton of sense. So I think that's kind of the reality of it today is it's an escalation of prices, and the technology is pretty amazing. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Somebody's dog got loose already.
That would be mine. She's unhappy because she's in her kennel.
Okay. Colonel Scott, do you want to say something here?
Yeah, just one more clarification I thought of while Mr. Kleiner was talking. Keep in mind that the whether or not the dog handler from out of state or the person in the presence of the guide needs to purchase a permit or not, doesn't really mean whether or not we can hold them accountable. If they're engaged in the hunt and chasing the dogs around and they're involved in this, they could still be, if it was appropriate, charged with civil trespass if they're handling the dog and so forth. This really comes down to who do we want to have to purchase a permit? Do we want everyone? Do we want people who are just, handling and owning dogs? We want people who are in the presence of guides to be exempt. Just because you don't have a permit doesn't mean that you couldn't be held accountable for civil trespass if your dog, wasn't a piece of property it wasn't supposed to be on. Obviously, the commissioner wouldn't have the ability to revoke that permit, but she would then have the ability to not allow you to get another one in the future for a year or two or whatever the statute has. So just something to keep in mind. It doesn't mean that just because I'm with a guide and I decide, that I'm going to be civil trespassing, and if the warden determines that that person is accountable as well, we could still hold them accountable. We're really just deciding on who does and doesn't need to purchase the permit.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for a question for Colonel Scott. Bear would be included, all the predatory species would be considered in that main guide, and out-of-state main guide would both have to, that all species would be covered in that, right?
Well, the way the current statute is written and the way that that this bill is written is so that all species are included in all the requirements. However, the requirement I spoke to earlier about a non-resident who comes to Maine to hunt bear with dogs has to hunt in the presence of a registered resident Maine guide. That only speaks to bears. So technically, a non-resident could come here in February and hunt coyotes with their dogs, because that's specific to bears, that requirement for the non-resident and dog hunting. To just complicate it a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess I finally got to the crux of the question that Mr. Parker had. He felt that if you were going to allow out-of-staters to come hunt bobcats or coyotes or whatever, they should have to have that permit also, not just bear.
Well, if you were, if they came to the state to hunt coyotes, say, the requirement's not in there for them to hire a registered Maine guide, so they wouldn't be hunting in the presence of them, so they would have to. Remember, the exception is if you're in the presence of a Maine guide. So if you're not, everybody would have to have it then.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Somebody interested in making a motion on this bill? Okay. Representative Terrio.
Make a motion not to pass.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none. Linda, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Representative Lyford,
Yes.
Representative Mason,
Yes.
Representative Hepler,
Yes.
Senator Curry is not with us right now. Senator Black,
Yes.
Senator Dill,
Yes.
Representative Landry,
Yes.
Representative Terrio,
Yes.
Representative Danny Martin,
Yes.
Representative Ordway,
Yes.
Representative Ali,
Yes.
Representative Nedu,
Yes.
and Representative John Martin.
Yes.
So that gives us 12 in favor, 1 absent.
On LD 1951, an act related to hunting dogs and civil trespass, it's ought to pass 12-0. And I will close the work session on LD 1951, and remind everybody, please, to mute yourselves when you're not speaking. And I will open up the work session on LD 1992, an act related to electronic registration and tagging of turkey. And I will go to Julia.
Great, I'll go ahead and share this one as well. And one technical note that I wanted to make as we go into this work session is that the turkey bill is identical to 1991, the big game bill. And should they both pass, they'll create a conflict of law that will need to be remedied next year due to that conflict. Just something to note.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So going down to the summary here, this bill directs the department to adopt rules to allow for electronic tagging beginning in 2023. And it also requires a report for the additional statutory changes that are needed in order to create electronic tagging system. And it gives the committee permission to report out a bill related to electronic tagging in the next legislature. And it also allows hunting of turkey without registration in 2022 or 2023.
All right, questions for Julia? Representative Danny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Julia. I understand that we're discussing 1992, but what would be the conflict in the event both of these were to move forward in some form or fashion?
You're asking what conflict that creates?
Yes.
So both bills are written they amend the same sections of law. So should both pass, you could think of the bills almost as instructions. And so if they both pass, they both would be amending the same section of law. And so you'd have one version that was passed and another version that was passed. And how that would reflect is that it would have two versions of the same section of law written differently. And that would be a conflict of law that would then need to be resolved. But both absolutely can be passed. It just noting that it would create that conflict in statute, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions for Julia? Any general questions? Anyone? Yes. Anyone want to hear from the commissioner? Commissioner, would you like to weigh in on electronic tagging at the moment?
Yes, thanks, Senator Dill. I just wanted to clarify that the department was hoping to just limit the no tagging to 2022, and that we would be looking to tag turkeys in the spring and fall in 2023. So I think there was just one minor difference in what Julie said.
I can make that change.
Yeah, so it would make a slight amendment on the bill. Okay. Other questions, discussion, comments? Does anyone want to make a motion on this? Yes, Representative Lyford, did you have something first or?
Well, just you asked for comment.
Yep.
I haven't heard from any hunters, but I have heard from 5 variety stores that really are opposed to this bill, so I won't be supporting the bill.
Okay. Representative Danny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would move LDR to pass as amended on 1992.
Okay, is there a second?
I second that.
Seconded by Representative Terrio. Discussion, Representative Mason.
I'm set, Mr. Chair. I want to
Okay.
make a motion.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm curious, has anyone else heard from convenience store or, traditional tagging stations? I have not, but just curious if anybody else.
Representative Ordway.
I have not on turkeys, but certainly on the next one.
I would agree with what Representative Ordway. I have not heard anything on turkeys, but I certainly have heard on big game. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Linda, would you call the roll?
Yes. Again, starting with Representative Lyford,
No.
Representative Mason,
Yes.
Representative Hepler,
Yes.
Senator Black,
Yes.
Senator Dill,
Yes.
Representative Landry,
Yes.
Representative Terrio,
Yes.
Representative Danny Martin,
Yes.
Representative Ordway,
Yes.
Representative Ali,
Yes.
Representative Nadeau,
Yes.
and Representative John Martin.
Yes.
So that gives us 11 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 absent.
Okay, on LD 1992, an act related to the electronic registration and tagging of turkey ought to pass as amended. Passes 11-1. And with that, I will close the work session on LD 1992.
Hey, Jim,
Yes, sir.
what about Peter's, what would he like to hear?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Representative
Lyford.
Lyford,
Ought not to pass.
ought not to pass. Okay. Straight ought not to pass. Okay, so I'll open up the work session on LD 1991, an act related to electronic registration and tagging of big game. Representative Martin, do you have a question before we start?
No, I guess we're going to turn it over to Julie. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. All right, Julia.
Thank you, Senator Dill, and I'll go ahead and share this one. They're being a little elusive today. I apologize. Let me try again. There it is. Too many windows open. Okay, is everyone able to see this? Great. So going down to the summary here, it similarly directs the department to adopt rules allowing for the registration of big game, and it requires a report for the additional statutory changes needed in order to do so. And it grants the committee permission to report out a bill related to the electronic tagging of big game in the 131st legislature.
Julia, if we were to pass this, can we rectify somehow today the conflict, or do we have to wait and send the two through the floor and see what happens there and then have to change it like next year? Could we roll it into one bill, I guess is what I'm saying, kill something and combine them?
Yes, so either bill is able to carry both. You could amend, it would require reconsideration of the turkey bill,
Right.
But you could amend either to include big game and turkey or whatever animals you chose, and that would do away with the conflict.
Okay, I'll just leave the conflict there and change it later.
You can pass two bills that have the conflict. It would just need to be changed next year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As we all know, this committee has discussed this piece of legislation several times, and that's a good thing. But if you recall, during the public hearing, we had asked the commissioner to confer with Nate Terrio, a guide up in northern Maine, and Don Kleiner, Maine Guys Association. I wonder if the commissioner could share with the committee as to whether that occurred, and if in fact a compromise on this piece of legislation was agreed upon.
I'm happy to do that, Representative Martin, and I'm pleased to share that we were all able to meet yesterday morning. So it was myself, Deputy Commissioner, and a few of our staff, along with Don Kleiner, both of the Terrios, and a representative from the Maine Sporting Camp Association as well. And I'm just going to confer what I believe we agreed to. What we talked about was that the department currently has the authority to make exceptions for tagging agents so that they don't have to be open to the public. So we already have the ability, and we have several guides that are already serving as tagging agents for the department. So we currently have that ability. We can do it for any species that requires tagging. So we have those abilities, but we recognize that the administrative burden, if all tagging or all guides and sporting camps or lodges wanted to become tagging agents, would be significant on the department. So we would propose that we would go to rulemaking just to put some parameters or some sideboards around sort of a volume and a geography of when we would look to approve and when we would look to not approve guys as tagging agents. And I think Don Kleiner can weigh in as well, but certainly, we probably are not going to make guides that, only, harvest or, oversee a few animals a year. We're not going to be able to have that kind of administrative burden on the department. But certainly we could look at folks that are doing a volume of animals and that are, where there are geographic holes in proximal stores. Certainly the Terrios situation seemed to be one that would support a tagging station representation. So our proposal will be that we go through rulemaking just so that the guys and the sporting camps, everybody understands, kind of the sideboards of when they could expect to be approved. Likewise, when they could expect to be denied or kicked out. And so we also have this challenge of collecting the fees with the tagging agents. And so that has been sort of an ongoing fee. I was under the impression that with the electronic data entry, that we had been much more successful at collecting the fees due to the department. But yesterday I was made aware that although we have a much more accurate accounting of what the tagging agents owe us, we still have substantial debt from some of the tagging stations. So that would be a parameter, if folks don't, pay the statutory fees to the department. That's one scenario. If they don't collect the biological data that's needed for our species, that would be another scenario where we would say this isn't working out for the species. So that is, I believe, the proposal. Dawn, did I get that about right? Or Tim, or on the call? Does that seem somewhat accurate to what we discussed yesterday?
Commissioner, before we get to Mr. Kleiner and Mr. Terrio, the bill that we're discussing, big game includes moose, bear, and deer, correct?
Yep.
So are you suggesting that in lieu of LD 1991, that you feel you have the authority to, let's say, give Don Kleiner or give Nate Terrio the ability to register and tag moose, bear, and deer?
We do. And honestly, Representative Martin, I think it's a very good solution because it is, at a setting like that, we can train their staff on the electronic data entry. So it is to some extent sort of what they're looking for. And at the same time, they have registered guides there. We can train them on collecting the biological data. So the department would not lose that very important component of our management system. So rather than having all hunters have the ability to have, self-reporting, we would have, use staff like or outfits like the Terrios, and have them have the ability to both tag the animals for their clients as well as collect the biological data that the department needs.
If I may, Mr. Chair, one more here, then we can turn it over to Mr. Kleiner and Mr. Terry if they're present. So Commissioner, if in fact you have that authority, and I'm not questioning that, I'm led to believe, my sources tell me that an agent located up in my district, or in Representative Martin from Eagle Lakes District, once requested that authority and that was denied. Is that the case?
I'm not familiar with that case, but I will share with you that we just got this authority a few years ago.
Okay,
So the committee passed this, I think it's been about 5 years. And so since we moved to the direct data entry, we did adjust the rules so that now we are allowed to waive the requirements for public, for the public to come. We can also, be very selective whether folks just are going to handle moose, bear, or all of the above.
So Commissioner, if we were to strip out of LD 1991, moose and bear, since you believe you have that authority, what would the department's position be if we only left electronic tagging of deer in the bill?
Yep, that's a really good question, Representative Martin. And I think the department, is certainly in the southern part of the state. I feel like we have a pretty, because most people in southern Maine, or a lot of people in southern Maine, bring their deer to a meat cutter, and so we can collect the biological data in the southern part of the state without much a whole lot more work or financial commitment. In northern, western, and eastern Maine, where we still have lower deer populations, and most people in those areas are more likely to cut process the animal themselves. I'm not convinced that we could collect the biological data that we need. And really in those parts of the states where we're still trying to recover that species, I think it's imprudent to limit our ability to get that biological data at this point in time. So, I think it would be something we could look to do in certain WMDs in southern Maine, but I would be hesitant to make that part of the process for northern Maine, or that sort of northern, western, eastern Maine.
Thank you.
Before we move on to some more questions, I'll go to Don Kleiner to weigh in on the discussion that you guys had yesterday.
Yeah, just a little history here. The provisions that allowed smaller operations to become tagging agents is relatively new, and 5 years sounds about right to me. So the process has been underway. When I polled my board, turned out I have 2 board members that have recently become tagging agents, and we're both pleased with the result. So let me assure you that the department is already doing this on some scale, and that it's, to my knowledge, gone very well to this point. I view it as a good intermediate step. And Representative Martin, like you, I think I see the future is electronic. You already passed the turkey bill, which I view, or we view, as a good experiment to see how to do this. And taking this issue up again after we have a little data in hand may make a lot of sense. But for now, I think you have an alternative in front of you that we've agreed with the commissioner and the department on how to do, that will get us at least stopgap to that next place where we have a little more information about electronic tagging. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is a question or statement, but do we really want both bills to be combined to go out onto the floor? Will we possibly lose both of them?
No, that's a good point. I was just asking if, that was one solution if we wanted to, but no, I hear you completely on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I guess I just changed my question, and that would be to the commissioner or Colonel Scott. When someone applies for a tagging license, say a guide, is there a background check, a criminal background check?
Anytime a tagging agent makes an application, whether it's a guide, an outfitter, or a local store, there's discussions between both the Bureau of Resource Management and Administration and Warden Service as to whether or not we think that there would be any issues with that. Obviously, if an individual is applying for a license and they have an extensive history of not complying with our laws, especially our registration laws or night hunting or season and bag limits, the commissioner could deny that application. It doesn't happen very often, but that is considered though. Their past fishing game history though. Yes, sir.
And we do reach out to the district wardens and the regional biologists to get information or feedback. And likewise for guides, of course, if they have any fish and game violations, then their license actually goes in front of the guides board. So I think there are some protections there.
Deputy Commissioner Peabody, comment on this?
Yeah, there's a credit check run. That's in our rule currently, along with the approval that the commissioner just mentioned. We do actually run a full credit check on the applicant.
When you say credit, that's background check, you mean?
No,
just credit.
Financial credit check.
Okay. All right, Representative Ordway, anything else?
Well, I have some comments on the bill overall. I think I'll wait till after the questions.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Senator Black.
So the department, this question is to the department. So if a person, if we were to vote against this bill, turkeys and bear and moose, the department is willing to work with guides and outfitters in certain areas to make sure that they can tag their, like in remote areas of Aroostook County and wherever in the state of Maine. The department is saying they're willing to work with these guides and outfitters to tag on site for their animals. And if they wanted to, they could tag for the public if they wanted.
Sure. Yep. So Senator Black, yes, the department is committed to moving forward with that in a probably, I would say, a more overt way, or we have the authority now, and we may have been remiss in not reaching out to guides directly. Where guides have reached out to us, we have approved them as we, as appropriate. But I do want to just, reiterate, Dawn, how many licensed guides are there in the state? 5,000.
There are about 5,000 licensed guides.
So we probably are not going to be able to accommodate all 5,000. And so with that, there are going to be some people that get approved and some people that don't. So we need to set up some sort of boundaries or some, sideboards around the guides that folks that are hard, that they're guiding, 40, 50, 100 animals. I think certainly would be that would be the, framework, and folks that are in remote areas and not proximal to much of anything. So we look at some of those geographic issues and then the volume, if you will. And so go through the rulemaking process. It'll be a public process. The guides can all weigh in. But then they have some standard to what they can expect and some understanding and just some transparency in how it's all going to work. Right now, it's not in, those parameters are not in the rules right now.
Thank you.
Representative Mason. Okay. Representative Landry.
Thank you, Senator Dill. Just a couple of questions. We, of course, could limit this to deer and bear or one or the other. So there's no problem with that. And one of my concerns, and hasn't been brought up for a while, is I know a lot of people who like to put deer in the freezer without tagging them. How do you feel, Commissioner? What effect is this going to have on the poaching of deer?
Thank you, Representative Landry, and I will let the Colonel address that if that's okay.
Certainly.
Clearly, as we kind of testified before, that once you remove the requirement to bring the public resource, which you have reduced to your possession, the deer, so to speak, in front of an agent, the commissioner, a tagging agent, and answer questions and fill out a form and sign your name to a line, that will the self-registration will definitely make it more likely that people, because it's easier, would potentially violate the law. Maybe even some people who aren't necessarily inclined to intentionally or be predisposed to may find that it's just easier to do so. And as well, we feel that it's going to make it more difficult for us to detect those violations, because the contact with whom these folks need to have the expectation to go to a tagging agent, or how they transport their animal may be different in their mind. So I testified during the earlier public hearings that these tagging agents are funnel points for all public resources that are killed, and they are focus points with the department and with the game wardens of where they can go to talk to hunters, inspect harvested game, talk to the tagging agents. And I do think we heard from one tagging agent earlier in the week that commented on how our current system works. They even have the ability to flag records as they come in if they feel that there's something suspicious or amiss about it, and it immediately notifies the game warden. So without a doubt, I mean, it's anecdotal, of course, but anecdotal after 25 years of working with game wardens in this field, there's likely easier to violate registration laws and more difficult to detect them.
Do you have any idea now as to what percentage of the deer kill is taken illegally?
No, there's currently a study ongoing between AFWA and the Boone and Crockett Club and some other NGOs across the country to attempt to identify that number, but it would be speculation. But I would also speculate to say that probably everyone on this call has known somebody in their past, or has been associated with somebody who has violated the fish and game law. So, take it for what it's worth, myself included, knowing somebody, obviously. So, but that's a hard thing to measure, because when you survey folks, they aren't always going to offer up the fact that they did violate a fish and wildlife law. However, there is a national study underway right now to try to determine those figures.
Thank you.
Representative Ordway.
We'll stick with the tagging stations. I would suggest and not ask for any rule making, but the criminal background check just seems to make sense to me. And the other part of that is the commissioner noted that we have some tagging agents that are not sending in the fees. And if we have the ability to check their credit scores, do we have the ability to ding their credit scores for non-payment?
So I wasn't trying to kind of throw the tagging agents under the bus. I was just raising that would be one of the reasons why we would over time disallow someone to become a tagging agent. So we have been working pretty diligently to collect the fees, and the vast majority of tagging agents are responsible and pay their bill. But that would be one of the things that we would establish in rule, that, multiple seasons of not paying your bill would result in the loss of your authority as a tagging agent. But I guess we could look into some sort of credit issue. There you are, Representative Ordway, you moved. I don't know, Tim, do we currently do that?
Yeah, would have to be a very extreme situation before we would take it to collections where it would actually affect the credit score.
Representative Danny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The group that was tasked to meet and come up with a compromise in lieu of this piece of legislation also included Mr. Terrier from up north here. I wonder if, Mr. Chair, if we could let him in and give him an opportunity to discuss the so-called agreed upon proposal.
Sure. Linda, would you let in Nathan Terrio, please? Good morning.
How's everybody doing? Sorry about the appearance. I've been out plowing.
Representative Danny Martin, you had some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nate, I just wondering if you were listening. The commissioner and Mr. Kleiner had an opportunity to share with the committee the so-called agreed upon proposal or compromise. And we wanted to give you an opportunity to share with us your understanding and whether or not it's doable.
Yeah, it was, I thought it went really well. It looks like we're gonna have the ability to tag moose and bear. And, you know, that was our big concern. Think it'd be a good opportunity to be able to work with the department and collect the samples that are needed. Also, I think it's a good opportunity to maybe push the e-tagging a little bit further down the road. I mean, definitely something that probably is coming. And, you know, if there's a way that we can help to pilot the program, we're happy to do it. But looks like for this year, you know, being able to tag moose and bear is going to be a huge benefit. And it's going to help with the experience that the people are going to have when they come here.
Nate, do you have any comment on the third piece of this piece of legislation, which included the electronic tagging of deer?
You know, I mean, there's definitely going to be concerns, and I think we've heard that. I think, you know, learning to mitigate that and you know, kind of see what is the sample. I think you just got to, you know, got to start somewhere with it. And I'm not the expert on it, and I understand there's issues with you know, new systems and social impacts and everything, you know, but I think it's going to be important to you know, maintain a level of status quo here in the future, because it looks like everyone's headed that way, and especially with COVID and deer carrying it, and people coming out and tagging deer and going back in and selling groceries. It's just, you know, I think that the social side of tagging stations are moving towards social media now more than the tagging station. But that's about all I could comment on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there other questions, comments? Representative Lightfoot.
Yeah, as far as a comment, I'm certainly not opposed to the guides registering and handling the big game. I think that it's going to explode, though, once some guides are excluded from that process. I am still opposed to the electronic tagging.
Okay. Representative Ordway.
I guess, would this be the time to, on the overall bill,
Sure.
make
Yep.
comment? Yeah, I'm opposed to the bill as it is for several reasons, and the local impact on mom and pop stores throughout the state was in a very recent past that we directed the department to open more tagging stations. That's one. The other thing is the complications that the commissioner has listed with the conflicts with existing law and the changes that would have to be made are just too many all at once. And another is the cost. The cost to the department seemed to be really big impact on the department's budget at this point. And I have giant concerns about the department having the ability to get the biological data that they need for proper game management. So I am opposed to this all around. I don't think it's probably coming in the future, but I don't think we're ready for it now. And if you want a motion, I'd make one.
Okay, we'll continue with discussion, and then I'll come back if anybody wants to make a motion. The one thing I would say, sort of what Representative Waterway just said, and I think it was Representative Hepler asked, I have heard from several tagging stations about big game, and they were opposed to it. They thought that they would lose revenue. It is kind of like I think someone has pointed out before, it's like a social thing. People gather, certainly with moose, we know how big that is at tagging stations, but even with some of the deer tagging stations in some of the areas, people, you know, sit there and drink coffee and talk and wait to see who's bringing in animals. So I have heard from several, and my concern is what Representative Landry already brought up. I had discussed this with him before. My concern is poaching. And I think it would have a tendency to make a poacher out of somebody who normally wouldn't do it. It's just that you get it home and it's kind of like, oh, well, I got it home and I'm going to cut it up and put it in my freezer. And so even though Colonel Scott said they may not get caught, I just don't want the temptation to be there to make an almost honest person a dishonest person. So those are my 2 cents worth. Any other comments? Representative Landry. You're muted.
I would agree with you, Senator Dill. I don't think we really need it now. Let's play with let's run the turkey bill, see how that works. The systems will be all set up where they've gone out. The department already has the authority to make concessions with Mr. Terrio and his group. I don't really think we need this bill, and I will certainly vote against it.
Senator Black.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with the comments. I had concerns from the beginning about poaching of deer. My biggest concern why I was considering supporting the tagging bill was the guide piece. I know Nate and some of the other guys have really extreme hardship handling those moose and deer, bear, and this would make their job easier as long as the department's willing to work with them. And I think that the guides and outfitters will get them all the information and do a great job of it, and they're qualified to do that. So I'll be voting against the bill.
Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to have the committee save a lot of time and energy. Therefore, I would move ought not to pass an LD 1991, and would request that the commissioner submit written correspondence with the committee regarding the authority to do exactly what was suggested this morning. If we could have something in writing, and I only ask for that because, as you well know, in November, we have an election. We could potentially have, and I hope not, a new administration. But if the commissioner would agree to submit that letter to the committee, I certainly will ask you folks to support or not to pass.
And I would second that.
I'll go back to Representative Ordway, who had been waiting patiently, I think, to probably make that ought not to pass motion, but
I'm good.
okay. Commissioner.
Sorry, I'm unclear what you want in the communication, Representative Martin, a copy of our current rules. I mean, just for the.
No, Commissioner, if I may, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Yes.
No, you stated that you had that authority.
Yep.
To do exactly, especially with moose and deer, and I don't doubt that. But would you send a letter to the committee, and that would be part of my motion, ought not to pass on this bill. A letter to the committee that would indicate to in writing that you do in fact have authority.
I'd be happy to do that. Sure. Yep.
All right. Any further discussion? Linda, please call the roll.
Yes. Representative Lyford.
No.
Representative Mason.
It's ought not to pass.
The motion was ought not to pass. Representative Lyford.
Yes.
Representative Mason.
Yes.
Representative Hepler.
Yes.
Senator Black.
Yes.
Senator Dill.
Yes.
Representative Landry.
Yes.
Representative Terrio.
Yes.
Representative Danny Martin.
Yes.
Representative Ordway.
Yes.
Representative Alley. You're muted, sir. I'll come back to you. Representative Nedu.
Yes.
Representative John Martin.
Yes.
And back to Representative Alley. You muted again, sir.
You were on mute. There you go.
There you go.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so again, we have 11 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 absent.
There was one opposed. Okay.
Yes.
I
I'm
get that.
sorry, no. I'm sorry.
I
I checked off originally Representative Lifer, but he was a yes. So that makes it 12 in favor and 1 absent. I
Okay.
apologize.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess I missed that one. Okay, on LD 1991, an act related to the electronic registration and tagging of big game ought not to pass 1201, and so the vote is ought not to pass. And the next thing we have on our agenda is LD 1813, which we tabled on Monday and said we'd bring it back today, pending some information. I think it was from New Hampshire, maybe, or someplace. But anyway, some more information. And so could I have a motion to take LD 1813 off the table, please?
So moved.
It's been moved and by
Second.
Representative Landry, seconded by Representative Alley. Okay, it's off the table. Julia, would you bring us up to speed on 1813?
There is not currently a draft in OPLA, so there's no update from my side after Monday. I do believe the department has some further information they can provide.
Okay, I will turn to the commissioner and see what we have for information from the department.
Thank you, Senator Dill, and I believe Deputy Commissioner can give you that update.
All right. Deputy Commissioner Peabody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We currently have a provision in Title 29A to for a $4 permit to operate an ATV on a roadway for agricultural purposes only. And looking at the New Hampshire law, they have a similar law with much more detail to it, probably more detail than we need. And since we already have a current law that addresses it, I think the problem is the narrowness of agriculture versus the broadness of the proposed language that was discussed the other day. You know, the broadness of the term commercial use. But I think we already have a provision to cover the agricultural portion of it.
All right, thank you. I did a little digging on it too, and since that's the Secretary of State's office, and I'll ask Julia this question, if we did want to broaden it out to commercial use of ATVs like landscapers, et cetera, that was the discussion, do we have to run this by, or should we run it by the Transportation Committee to get their input on it, or do we have the authority to do this and say you got to get this from the Secretary of State's office, like the agricultural $4 registration or permit or whatever it's called is now?
So you're right that it's outside our title and it wasn't included in the concept draft, so it would probably be wise to seek advice, but because the bill was referred to us, we do have authority to create statutory changes, but being that it's outside of Title 12.
Okay, so can we pass the bill as is and then say we've passed it and then just ask Transportation to weigh on it too, or?
The bill currently is a concept draft that changes the weight from 2,000 to 2,400. So it likely drafting these changes into something would be, the screen is moving, would be wise.
Okay. Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. When we last discussed it, I think we all agreed that we weren't interested in increasing the weight limit, which is now 2,000 pounds, correct? That being the case, what the sponsor of the bill, Senator Jackson, desired to do was simply have something or legislation or rulemaking through rulemaking that would allow a farmer, if he or she had a machine that exceeds the 2,000 pounds, to go from one farm to another using public access road, similar to what a tractor, a farming tractor without having to register can do. So I just want to make sure that we understand what authority the department has that would currently allow them to do exactly what we're asking for.
Thank you, Representative Martin, and I hear what you're saying, but I think during the discussion, some of the language that we kind of had did broaden it from just agriculture to other commercials, like I said, landscapers and other things, to be able to do the same type of thing, move from one area to another. If you're moving rocks from somebody's property and they happen to be on both sides of the road, technically they couldn't go across the road or something. And have heavier pieces of ATV to be able to withstand whatever they need to do.
So, Mr.
yeah.
Chair, did I misunderstand the department or Deputy Commissioner Peabody say that they currently have authority?
For agriculture.
Go ahead.
Now, agriculture can go to the Secretary of State. A farmer can go to the Secretary of State, get a $4 permit that allows them to do that. It doesn't necessarily say on a heavier vehicle. I don't know about that angle of it. It's for an ATV. So I think the issue of weight may still be there, but if you can use it on your farm, technically, because you can have overweight vehicles on your farm, then I would go back to Deputy Commissioner Peabody and ask him to weigh in on the issue around, an over 2,000-pound vehicle. You can still purchase one for your own personal use, like on your farm or in your business. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
But to use it off in your property, you'd have to have some type of permit, and a permit is available if you're a farmer to use it off your property, to move from one point to another on your property, meaning, as Representative Martin said, using a public access, side of the road, across the road, or whatever.
Are we certain that would include an ATV or UTV?
Senator, right now, Representative Martin, the law, the Title 29A motor vehicle law just says ATV. It should probably be looked at in reference to our current definition of ATV, which has changed over the last couple of years, and then the situation with oversized ATVs being unregistered. So I think if the language is drafted, that it'll need to be further discussed under the Title 29A provision.
So therefore, whatever we did here, it probably should be run through Transportation Committee. Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I would suggest that if agriculture has the ability, and I think we've been talking about agriculture, if they have the ability to purchase a $4 permit, sticker, whatever, under 29A, then I think we're good at this point. If commercial uses or changing the definition through the Secretary of State's office should probably just be a separate bill away from IFW committee to the Transportation Committee. I would just like to proceed as we are. If the farmers have the ability to use that now for $4, I say, let's go.
Julia, do you have a comment on this?
I just wanted to know if it'd be helpful to share the current authority on the screen so that
Sure.
people can understand. Okay. So this is what is being discussed right now. And this is existing law from 29A. So the Secretary of State can issue for $4, and it does include ATVs for minimal highway use.
That's letter E down below.
Yes, further.
So the question, I guess, becomes, with this bill, moving it from 2,000 to 2,400 pounds, does it have any bearing any place here? I mean, if we did that and just said it's for agricultural use, if that's what we're trying to get to on this bill, and Senator Jackson's not here, and Representative Martin, I don't know if you've had some conversations with him around it. And I don't know if that's what he's trying to get at, is just for agricultural use. Then if we move this to 2,400 pounds for agricultural use, is it that simple? Do you know, Representative Martin?
No, I have not had that discussion with the senator.
Okay. All right, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to throw a can of worms into this, but you know, a farmer can be using his agricultural purposes excludes any forest practices. Most registrations, you know, with my trucks or any of those vehicles, you know, I can't be doing forestry practice, you know. So if I am a farmer and I'm going to a woodlot and I've got a chainsaw and a you know, a little trailer behind me to go pick up some wood or whatever, technically, I don't think that you can do that. I think forest practices are excluded from it. It's just agricultural, but that's maybe I'm stretching there. But I know I can't even use my farm truck to haul firewood on the road.
Okay, Representative Landry.
The original bill was to keep these oversized vehicles off of trails. My concern is, are they going to take advantage of this to run on the trails? There's got to be some definition in there, something to keep them off the trails.
Okay.
Is that a valid point?
No, I think you're right. I think the permit only allows it for commercial use. It doesn't give you the permission to then turn around and go up and down trails, but
right. And if there's a 1 mile trail between two agricultural fields, if, you know, can they run that?
I'm not a judge. I guess that would be a legal question. So good point though. Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm confused about the special permit for $4 says ATVs. Does that include overweight ATVs?
And I think that's what we're deciding, because we've kind of defined what an ATV is. And so that's why I think now this bill, if we pass this bill and said this was for agricultural uses, it could be 2,400 pounds. Then my speculation would be that if we pass that bill and said that, then that would also mean that they could go get a $4 registration for use in their farming practices and be able to move it across the road and down the right of way, along the side of the road, etc.
Okay.
Deputy Commissioner Peabody, would you agree with that speculation, or?
Really, this discussion started strictly on agriculture with the ability to drive down the edge of the road. And I think that's where the debate is right now, is just the current definitions in Title 12 and Title 29A still appropriate to address this situation. But
right.
It really, it doesn't. I agree with Senator Black. Forestry is another whole issue here. I mean, again, it's the intent of the task force that none of this would be affected. So I think that the amendment or the proposed language that Tom Doak spoke of the other day is a start in the right direction. And if the forestry operator is going to operate it down the road, then we've got some more to discuss.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, we're having a lot of discussion going round and around here. Wouldn't it be prudent if we went to the source of this and get the bill sponsor to weigh in on this, and maybe the landowners that he's been conferring with that generated this bill, and see how what amendments or what we can do instead of guessing about it. That'd be my suggestion, I guess.
Okay, Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I would say my interpretation, and God knows I'm not an expert on it, my interpretation of that law in 29A does not put a weight limit on it. So a farmer could get a permit for $4 and operate an ATV. It's not defined by weight. I think the original intent of the bill was to keep overweight ATVs or UTVs off of the trails. I thought we accomplished that, and the issue with agriculture came up with what we're discussing now. I think we covered it, and the
Roy?
law is covering it.
You available to come to committee to talk about your ATV bill? What's up? We're discussing the weight going to 400 pounds. Was it mostly for agricultural purposes that was the concern?
Senator, I would suggest we're not muted.
No, I'm talking to Troy. That's
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think obviously that's the biggest concern, but there's going to be, I mean, if we just think in agriculture, it's different. There's going to be a lot of other people that are going to be upset with why not them.
okay. So do you have a moment to come to committee to talk to us?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Now?
Right now, we're discussing the bill.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Senator Jackson's going to link in to discuss his original thoughts. So continue, Lester. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, just I think we covered it in the original bill. And if the issue was agriculture, that's covered under 29A. 29A doesn't spell out a weight limit on it on an ATV.
It just says ATV.
Just says
Yeah.
ATV.
Yeah.
I'd go back to where we left off before we came back to reconsideration. I think we were pretty good. And agriculture was covered. So trails, we're trying to protect trails.
Yeah, absolutely. Representative Martin.
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally agree with Representative Ordway, because what happened, if a situation would happen, they would probably confer with the department, and the department would say, no, we have a 2,000-pound weight limit. We may have forgotten, Mr. Chair, what the department's proposal was. So I wonder if either Tim could share something on the screen, so when Senator Jackson appears before the committee, everyone will be on the same page and we'll all know what the current proposal is.
Sure. Tim, did you have that, or was it Tom Doak that had it?
Tom Doak has that.
Okay. So, Linda, would you let Tom Doak in? And would you make sure that Troy has the link? Because Troy's calling me.
Yes, Senator, I just sent him the link.
Linda just sent you the link. Yep. All right.
What?
Yep. And as soon as he gets here, Linda, let him in, if not, depending on which link you gave him.
Yes.
Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Senator.
Do you have,
I think, Julia, you put it up last time, I think, for us.
Yes, my computer's being a little finicky. Let me see if I can find it in my email. Can you remind me, it didn't come from your name, it was someone else.
Carla Black.
Carla Black, I can search for that. Okay. I found it in my email. Let me see if I'm able to share it. There you are. And
And it's, yeah, it's down at the bottom. So this Senator, should I continue?
Yes.
We probably should wait for Senator Jackson, so.
Well, that's true. The thing is, I don't see him. Let me see if he's over and.
He is just being brought in now, Senator. He just arrived and I'm moving him in.
Okay. That's okay. He's always late, so.
It's not true.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there, Senator.
I rush for you all the time, Senator Dill.
Right. So here's where we are, Senator. We're discussing your bill, and we had some folks working on it, and what they did is they kind of made it for commercial ATVs so that meant if it's agriculture, it could have been maybe a landscaper or whatever, so they could have a little heavier vehicle. And the concern that has come up was getting from point A to B if it's not contiguous land owned by the farmer or whatever. They got to cross a highway, they got to go down the side of the road or whatever. And we felt that the main purpose of our original bill was to protect the trail system. So the idea was here, if we increased, according to your bill, some ATVs, working ATVs, I guess I would call them, rather than recreational ones, so to speak, commercial purposes, those would not be allowed to go on the trails, but they would be allowed to be used in a commercial operation. So we're trying to get back to the crux of what your bill was trying to get to. Was it just agriculture? Was it broader than agriculture? Because there is a permit that you can get from the Secretary of State for $4 that allows an agricultural ATV to go across the right of way, across the road, down the side of the road, etc. And it's just a $4 sticker.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to come back to you as the source of the bill to try to get the original intent.
Well, I appreciate that, Senator Dill, and members of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. I obviously just snuck in here, so I believe this is your work session. So I'll
Yes.
say I'm Senator Troy Jackson, represent Senator District 1, Aroostook County, and I do appreciate the community. I think Representative Terrio had brought up the challenge of peeling back this onion or whatever, and I totally understand that. But and I appreciate the committee, and I appreciate the people working on this. I think what I had heard from was obviously all kinds of people that had these vehicles, and the original intent of the bill was to raise the weight limit to 400 pounds and keep the width restriction. But the trouble is that while I understand how important it would be for agricultural use to have an exemption, and I'm not saying that if the committee chooses to go with that, I think that's better than where we are right now in many stands. I think we're going to cause more problems. And I think it's going to be harder for the department to enforce when some people see the very same ATV being used, on the trail system, but they can't because they're not a landowner or they don't have an agriculture exemption. So that does concern me. I'm just saying that I think that's going to be problematic. And while I appreciate the intent, and I'm not saying that's not better than where we are right now. If you ask what the intent of my bill was, it was to raise it for everyone 400 pounds. That's what I think all machines would comply under that. And obviously there'll be somebody that'll probably build a bigger one soon, if not already. But I think that slams the door because we passed this law while there was machines that were already over the 2,000 pound exemption. And I know there was a grandfather, so anyways, I'm going to stop rambling at that, but you asked me for my intent. It was to give everybody the 400 pounds extra.
And I think that's what we wanted to hear, that we thought it was more of a carve out for agriculture and that technically it's probably already there.
Yeah.
So that's what we wanted to hear. So I know there's some questions for you. Representative Danny Martin.
Not necessarily, thank you, Mr. Chair, not necessarily a question, but a comment. There doesn't appear to be any support on the committee for full passage, Troy, that would allow an increase of additional 400 pounds. The language that you see on the screen, or was it on the screen, is something that Tom Doak and others worked with the department as a compromise. Another option would be to use the verbiage that's contained in Title 29A, but I would strongly suggest to the committee that we don't go that route, because there'll be a conflicting opinions and language between 29A and Title 12. If we're going to do something in some form or fashion, Tom Doak or the agreement that was shared with us is a reasonable compromise. Another option, of course, is to move ought to pass on your bill and see where that goes. But I strongly suggest that that's going to be a divided vote.
And, you know, and I understand that, Representative Martin. I mean, personally for myself, I just think that then you're going to have people's that'll be upset that, well, you know, because I'm not a landowner, I don't get to use my vehicle. You know, I mean, this, as we all know, this is the challenges of legislating, the unintended consequences. But anyways, I'll leave it at that. Committee chooses to do, I'll understand.
Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I would just ask that if there's an issue with other people going to be involved and they don't like the decision, that it wouldn't, I don't think it would be this committee that would change Title 29A so that commercial use can be used on the road like agriculture can now. I would suggest that we work this bill without that concern. And if there's a concern about other people wanting to use the roads or pass for other commercial activities, that go to the Transportation Committee.
Yeah, honestly, Representative Ordway, I don't know if that was for me or not, but my bill wasn't for a commercial pass on the roadways or anything like that. I mean, I think the challenge is that this committee and then this legislature, you know, change the weight restrictions, and at least for me, I've had a number of people very upset about that. Now, obviously, the legislature can stay where it is, and those people can continue to be upset. My bill was actually to increase the weight limit so that everyone could use the current machines on the trails. But I understand what you're saying.
Follow up, Representative Ordway.
Yeah, what I got from the testimony in the public hearing was from farmers that were upset that they didn't have the ability to go from field to field. I don't believe one of them mentioned trails. So that's why we were in this position, because the testimony came from farmers that were upset that they couldn't go from field to field crossing somebody else's land.
I think, I mean, I know for a fact my testimony was not that, but I think there was at least one large landowner that was thinking about shutting all trail access off because all the machines weren't 2,400 pounds or so that, you know, at least in one case, was for everyone to be able to use the 2,400 pound machine in the landowner. But that certainly was my testimony, is that I was hearing from constituents, not just landowners, that were upset that some of their neighbors could go with a certain machine, but they could not.
Are there other questions or comments for Senator Jackson especially? And yes, Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, was not a question for Senator Jackson, but for Julia. So I can wait.
Are there other questions for Senator Jackson? I do want to thank you, Senator, for dropping everything and getting over to our committee to answer our questions. So
on time. No, I thank all of you, seriously. However it ends up, I appreciate the committee's willingness to try and grapple this. I know it's a tough issue. I do. So thank you.
Right. Thank you. Representative Landry.
I realize that the trail system in the county is probably a lot different than the trails we have down here. And you certainly have ATV trails going a lot along large agricultural properties. Would an alternative or a way to get to it would be agricultural on trails that are designed for it? Or is that getting into the weeds too much? I don't know who that's to, just a thought.
I would expect enforcement might be tough on that, but I don't know. So maybe Colonel Scott can weigh in on that one. Did you hear what he said, Colonel Scott?
If you could say it one more time, I heard something about trails related to agriculture.
Yeah, my point was that in the county, the trail system's different than the trail system, for instance, down here in Western Maine. Our trails, we want to keep the smaller machines on. Is there some way to maybe limit it to the heavier developed trails, the larger trails up in the county?
I would revert to what the task force recommendations were. They worked on those issues for 2 years. And, I don't think if their idea was to split the state up, they would have done that. I do think that that the testimony we heard from the farmer last week or what have you about their concern about going over somebody's land, that possibly Mr. Doak's language addresses that. And as the Deputy Commissioner said, there is language in 29A which addresses limited agricultural use, but going down the road, it's just really a question of is an ATV over 2,000 pounds no longer an ATV under that definition, and they do refer back to Title 12 for the definition of ATV. But I think getting outside, starting to look at wider trails and regions of the state, and we have varying landowner desires that were expressed through the task force. I think we're getting outside the realm of where we want to be.
Well, I think going into the road use is getting outside of it too. I mean, that really wasn't their point. They want to be on the trails.
Quite possibly, sure.
Deputy Commissioner Peabody, do you want to weigh in on this question?
Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to clarify that the way that Title 29A is currently written, that it pulls in our definition of ATV, which would include an oversized ATV. So we wouldn't have to adjust any definitions in 29A. It would stand for an oversized ATV.
Okay, thank you. Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be a little off topic, but Colonel, I know this law is new. Have you gotten anybody that's been on a trail this past summer that's been overweight?
I can't answer that right now. I could find that information for you. It hasn't been at any kind of an alarming weight where it's raised to the level of me hearing about it. We encounter folks all the time who are on operating ATVs where they aren't supposed to be on trails on places without permission, et cetera. But specific to the new law, I can't answer that. I could find out for you, but it hasn't been to the level or the instance where it's caused a problem.
Okay. Another question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
When like this summer, how are you going to enforce the weight? I mean, you have a list of manufacturers' weight, by the machine, what it weighs. How are you going to weigh them? I'm just kind of curious.
We have access to same manufacturer specs everybody else does. I envision that we're going to continue to enforce ATV limits as we always have. When it comes down to the size and weight, it'll be on a complaint basis. Obviously, the 65 inches can be readily apparent. If you see one that's grossly oversized, our staff could question the operator about that. Of course, we have to discuss with the landowners as well as far as what their desires are. But as far as weight goes, unless we have a specific complaint regarding somebody's ATV, our staff isn't carrying around lists of individual ATVs and specs and what they weigh. No.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have two questions, and I think Dan Scott answered one of them, which is that it seems like the stakeholder group included people from Northern Maine. Right?
Oh, sure. Deputy Commissioner could answer that more better than I could. He
Okay.
was on it, but I
Okay.
included a very large group of folks
Okay.
across the whole board. Yes.
Okay. And then the follow-up question is actually it is for Julia. Can you share the language from Tom Doak again? Thanks. Thanks.
Representative John Martin. Want to leave that up for a while, Julia, just so we have it there? Representative John Martin.
Yeah, thank you. If you can hear me.
Yes.
I like that language, to be honest. But going back to the weight question and just thinking out loud, as the number of people go to 4 on any machine, this 400 pounds is going to be occupied, and the department is going to be starting to weigh people and ask their weight in order to verify whether or not they're overweight or whether they're over the limit. I mean, at some point, if we allow them here, I don't know how we can stop it in the long run.
Yeah, of course, the weight does just refer to the weight of the machine as it is. Once you load it up, I mean, you know certainly perfectly well, Representative Martin, you could get a couple people in there and put 500 or 600 pounds of gear on the back of it, and you're at 3,000 pounds easily. So
yeah, and that's my point.
Yeah,
and so the trails need to be built sufficiently well so that they can carry the extra stuff that they're putting on those machines now. Never mind, down the road. And I think that as someone who gives permission to people to use my land, I can decide whether or not I want them there or not.
I think the issue would become, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure Deputy Commissioner Peabody could answer this, originally being able to purchase a machine, though, that weighs over 2,000 pounds would be difficult for me as an individual. Maybe not so much for a farmer or whatever, but for me as an individual that is going to be traveling around and may come to your property and say, hey, can I use it? I'm probably not going to have a 2,400 pound vehicle because they're not going to be available to me. Is that correct, Deputy Commissioner Peabody?
Thank you, sir. There's a lot of things in this conversation, and I'm just going to back us up just a little bit. Right now, everything and this is going back to Representative Mason's discussion with the Colonel, everything on the landscape right now has been grandfathered essentially. So out on the trails, you're going to have oversized ATVs operating. They're registered. They're going to be grandfathered. So this is all moving forward because the law is just being implemented right now. So if I buy a new machine that's over 2,000 pounds, that transaction of not being able to be registered is going to be a transaction that takes place right at our agents. The Colonel's not going to be weighing machines out on the trail. If it's got a sticker on it, his presumption is going to be that that machine was legal when it was registered, unless you believe otherwise. And they would have to do an investigation to figure that out. So basically, if warden sees an ATV on the trail, it's got a sticker on it. The presumption is that it was legally registered unless there's something to tell them that it wasn't. So,
but Deputy Commissioner, what happens if I buy that machine that's already, that's going to be prevented, right?
if you buy the machine, a grandfathered machine, Representative Martin, that will continue to be grandfathered.
Okay. So it's basically where the concern is only in the question of the brand new purchase of a machine.
Yes.
That would be what it would be. Thank you.
Correct.
All right. Mr. Doak, did you want to weigh in on your paragraph?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Tim just said and add a little bit to it. So the only oversized ATVs you would see on a trail are those that were grandfathered. Anybody that purchases one after January 1st of this year, whether you're using it for commercial purposes or anything, they will not be out running around on the trail when other people can. So those will not be legally allowed on the trail. I think the amendment, and again, as I said last time, this isn't my issue, but I tried to address what I heard as a concern at the hearing. I think the amendment that you have there in front of you actually takes care of anybody that has an oversized ATV that wants to operate it in a commercial way. A person doing commercial work who is in that commercial business would be able to legally operate it off their own land if they had the permission of the landowner and they were involved in the commercial activity. I think that's what we talked about, because these cannot be registered. So the concern was, if I leave my land with an unregistered ATV, I am in violation of the law. And this would fix that. This would fix that issue. And I believe the discussion last time, Senator Dill, was one you raised about the vehicle, about going down a road that you couldn't get permission from somebody to drive down the road. And I think the 29A language actually takes care of the agriculture side. And I think there'd be very limited times when you'd have a non-agricultural one, frankly, going down very long on a road. So I've not ever heard of an issue around that, about a forestry, and there is no exemption now for forestry going down the road on an ATV. So I think we've gotten almost everything here, but again, it's not really my issue, but I've been trying to help this issue along. So
good. Thank you very much. Representative Danny Martin. You're muted, Representative Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Tom Doak, and I can fully support the proposed amendment that's before us. The concern that I have, and the concern that those of us that represent folks from Northern Aroostook County, the landowner that convinced, brought this forth and had Senator Jackson submit this language, the concern that I have is if that individual were to, in Northern Maine, shut down the ATV trails on her farming properties, would be drastic. So in lieu of not doing anything, I certainly could support this piece of legislation as amended and proposed by Tom Doak and those that work with the Commissioner's office on this.
Thank you. Representative John Martin.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what if I choose, there's probably a couple miles of trail on my land now, more than that probably. I'd put up a sign. And on this trail, you can use the machine that weighs more than the ones that are allowed by law. And nothing prevent that.
Except if we pass this the way it is, it has to be written permission.
Yeah, I could give written permission.
Yeah.
I'll come in to the house and I'll give them a piece of paper.
Yep. No, I'm just saying though, I understood what you said, because I could be out there and say, oh, I know I can ride on this property because the signs that say I can.
Right, right.
But according to this, technically I'd have to have it in writing.
Right. No. Yeah. And I support that. I think, because I can decide what I want for a machine on my property.
Okay. Representative Ordway.
Yeah, I would go back to the original bill and appreciate the work that the stakeholders group put in 2 years worth of work on. And at this point, I would only want to accept their recommendations. They put a lot of work into this, work beyond what this committee can do right now in a short amount of time. But I would respect that we asked these people to do the job, they did the job, and we should respect what the report that they gave us.
Sorry, Colonel, Deputy Commissioner Peabody, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, just, you gotta be careful that we're not getting into unregistered ATVs. Again, what Representative Martin was indicating, that if it's a registered ATV, he can determine, as you should, what can go on and off your property, but unregistered ATVs it's a different conversation when you start down that road. So, and that's been the baseline of this conversation is these machines we're talking about are going to be unregistered, oversized ATVs. And right now they're only allowed on the landowner's property, and you cannot actually give permission to ride them elsewhere.
Representative Terrio.
Thank you, Senator. I have a real hard time with this because I thought we did a really comprehensive job the first time, but I will support the amendment that Tom Dokes has put forward, because I think that does solve our problem as best we can without harming the trails that woman brought forth to us. And I hope that that solves her problem and we can move forward with this, because like Representative Martin said, he can put signs on his property to do anything he wants. And as long as we haven't infringed on that, I think this helps, and I think it'll do what we need it to do.
Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess the question I have is, did the stakeholder group talk about this kind of issue? Yeah, and if they did, could somebody tell us what they talked about?
Who wants to answer that?
I can, Senator. Thank you, Representative Hepler. The task force did not specifically talk about this issue. I guess I'll use the term, we missed it. And so I think it's a great discussion now, but I will say that it was not the intention of the task force to not allow the activity that the farmer brought up during the public hearing, or as it pertains to agriculture or anything else, or landscaping. That was not the intent of the task force deliberations to eliminate that.
Thank you.
Representative Danny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Commissioner Puberty, can the department support what has been presented and discussed by way of Mr. Dokes' proposed amendment?
Yes, we looked at it earlier and liked the broadness of the term commercial, because we didn't want to try to eliminate any type of that activity. And by trying to redefine the term commercial. So, and I think with the agricultural exemption in Title 29A, I think it comes together pretty well.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Mr. Chair,
yes.
Understanding fully well that there's no support to increase any weight limits, I would move ought to pass on this legislation as amended.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second that.
Been seconded by Representative Terrio. Further discussion, Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Martin. Can we change when we vote to, we make this motion to amend to ought to pass as amended, can we change the title of it? This is more of a process question, because that's really not what we're doing.
So Julia, can we change the title? I mean, we have in the past, so.
Well, what I'd be happy to do is, if you want to pass what, I have not had a chance to review the language, so you can pass that commercial owner or commercial business owners using an ATV up to 2,400 pounds for commercial purposes may use that ATV with written permission on land. And then I can come back with a draft of that, which may be identical, but.
Julia, I'm not sure that's what Mr. Doak's proposal is, or am I mistaken?
Would you, I guess it's, sorry to ask you to do this again, Julia, would you put that up one more time so we can
Yep.
look at it? Because I would agree with Representative Martin. I don't think it was captured right.
Yeah.
I don't see that we need to change that language
Right.
on the number 8 that's underlined.
I haven't had a chance to review it, so I couldn't give an opinion from Oakland on that at this time.
Right. Representative Hepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Julia, does that mean we can change the title? Because like I said, this really doesn't, if we pass this amendment, it doesn't capture what we do. And I'm also concerned about all the work that the stakeholder group did, and the title as it is makes it sound like we're just completely dismissing it. And I know that a lot of people just see the title. So.
Are you asking about the title of the bill presented by Troy Jackson? We
Yes.
can amend the title of the bill. Yes.
Okay.
And
Thank
that has to be part of the amendment, though. Is that correct, Julia?
Yes, you could make it part of the amendment.
Mr. Chair, as the person who made the motion, I would agree with that.
Okay.
And
Do you have a thought in mind, Representative Martin, what the title may be?
No, I'm sure. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I personally see no reason to change the title, because we do that all the time. You know, when you have a committee amendment, you never change the title, but it can be done. And if Julia wants to work on that, I'm okay with anything she comes up with.
I'm just trying to capture what Representative Hepler said, and it makes it sound like, oh yeah, look at that, we're going to raise the weight by 400 pounds, and that's not what we're doing. So, Representative Ordway.
Yeah, like normal, I'm confused. Would this amendment prevent oversized ATVs from what we passed already from using state trails or any trails as not being registered? It seems to me that's in a recreational way, not as a business way, not as agricultural or farming or landscaping.
I would refer to either Colonel Scott or Deputy Commissioner Peabody to answer that.
I could see it as an enforcement nightmare.
That's why I wanted to refer to them.
I think as written, the Mr. Doak's language, it's pretty specific to commercial activities, and I think it excluded, it's not right in front of me right now, but it excluded recreational commercial activities. So I think it's commercial activities. I think Mr. Doak said associated with the business of the owner and written permission. So it's fairly narrow. Oversized ATVs engage solely in commercial activities, and it goes on to define commercial activities for the purpose of this section means activities directly related to the business of the oversized ATV owner or operator, and does not include recreational activities or activities related to a recreational business. I mean, it would require a little bit of investigation, but I do think that it covers the farmer that had some concerns. Everything we do requires some interpretation and some judgment and some discretion. So they would have to have written permission from the owner that they're on, and they would have to be engaged in commercial activity that's directly related to their business. So it is fairly narrow, but it would take a little bit of work for our staff to determine whether or not they were in compliance.
Representative Ordway.
Under that definition, could someone renting ATVs commercially, would that activity be allowed?
No, I read this as the commercial activities directly related to the business of the person who's operating the ATV. Unless the person, unless I am a farmer, and maybe the farmer has a rented ATV, but it has to be being used in conjunction with the farm and the commercial activities of the farm. That's how I read it.
my concern is a rental thing. I know over in Western Maine, they have a snowmobile rental. And it's become a big issue for the clubs. And that's the issue. If somebody's just renting oversized ATV, that's their commercial use.
No, but I would offer that the use that the person who's operating it under the snowmobile or renting it is for recreational purposes. I think the commercial use is what it's being used for, why it's on the land. Are they going over to deal with their farm? I don't think it's where the ATV originated from. This is the use that's occurring on the land that they're gotten written permission to operate across. Is that a commercial use or is it a recreational use? If I rent a snowmobile to go out and ride it recreationally, that wouldn't apply. If I rent an ATV to ride it recreationally, that wouldn't apply. If I'm a farmer that owns or has the use of an oversized ATV and I'm using it in conjunction with my commercial farm, that would apply.
If I may, Senator?
Sure.
Would the sticker that's available to agriculture apply to that use under 29A?
That only, as far as I read it, that applies to use on a public way. It wouldn't apply to that vehicle once it's off the public road system.
Thank you, Colonel.
Other questions, comments? Representative Neto. You're muted, Representative Neto.
I have a question on how these oversized vehicles that are used for agricultural or commercial, what happens to these vehicles once they're no longer used for that purpose and somebody wants to sell that? Right now, we have grandfathered all of the vehicles, but then how do we know, oh, this was registered, but it was really an oversized vehicle, so now you can't really sell it for commercial, for recreational. So how would we keep track of all that? That seems confusing to me.
So we have a registration system. So I believe the way the law is written is any oversized ATV that is grandfathered, that was registered prior to January 1st of this year, is grandfathered, and those particular ATVs, and we estimate there's not a whole lot of them on the landscape. The numbers I've heard kicked around were 300 to 400 maybe. They're forever grandfathered, so to speak. Like Representative John Martin had asked if somebody had one of those and then sold it to him, it could be registered in the future, and our registration documentation would show that ATV was previously registered. If somebody bought a 2023 oversized ATV this July and purchased it for the use on their farm, it could be used on their own land because it does not need to be registered there. If this particular amendment that Mr. Doak had drafted up was to pass, it could be used for commercial purposes with written permission from the landowner that you were crossing. And then if in the future that farmer wanted to sell it to somebody else, that person could only use it on their own land or under that same exception. It would not be able to be registered. It wouldn't be registered in this case. It would just be operating under the exception of commercial use with written permission. So that ATV would really never get registered. And if it was sold to somebody else, it would have to be used only on their own land or under the same exception.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? All right. Okay, we've discussed this so long, I can't remember if we had a motion in the middle of it to Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I believe my motion, Mr. Chair, was ought to pass LD 1813, ought to pass as amended to include any change in the title that would satisfy the committee.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Representative Cheria.
I seconded it, yeah.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Linda, please call the roll.
Yes, Representative Blyford, Did he leave us?
He's not on the screen. His
He's not on the screen. All right,
name's there, but he may be back.
I'll come back. Representative Mason,
Yes.
Representative Hepler,
Yes.
Senator Black,
Yes.
Senator Dill,
Yes.
Representative Landry,
Yes.
Representative Terrio,
Yes.
Representative Danny Martin,
Yes.
Representative Ordway,
Yes.
Representative Alley.
Yes.
Thank you. Representative Nadu
Yes.
and Representative John Martin
Yes.
and Representative Lyford.
Yes, I just wanted to change the rotation.
I can do that. We'll start at the bottom next time. So that gives us 12 in favor, 1 absent.
Okay, on LD 1813, an act to amend the definition of oversized ATV to increase the minimum weight requirement. Ought to pass as amended 12-0 with 1 absent. And I will close the work session on LD 1813. And I believe that we have language review and fiscal review on LD 1873, an act related to airboats. Is that correct, Julia?
Yes, Senator Dill, and I'm happy to bring that up.
Please.
So here it is in its final form, and we did receive the fiscal note, which is a minor cost increase, and it can be absorbed within the existing budget. And I'm also happy there have been no substantive changes, but I'm happy to run through the language should anyone like to.
Anyone want to go through the language as if there was nothing major than when we passed it? Any changes? All right. I guess we're good on this. Anything else to come before us, Julia?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator Dill.
Linda?
No, not that I am aware of either.
Representative Danny Martin?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. It was a great discussion. I just received a text from a friend asking me if I had remorse and if I could survive because I ended up killing my own bill. Just want the committee members to know I'll be fine.
Representative Hepler?
Yeah, just a comment. I'm actually in a couple of hours going to be talking to a political science class on state and local government. And the kind of work that we do here in this committee is going to be used as a really good example of how that collaborative process works. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, can I have, Representative Camuso. Commissioner Camuso.
Thanks, Senator Dale. I just wondered if I could talk to you or, the chairs and leads after, just to go over the schedule for the supplemental budget presentation, if that's possible.
Sure. We can do that. Probably the best thing is, Judy, to send us a link.
Oh, it will take 2 seconds if you can just hang on.
Oh, okay.
On this call. Is that okay?
Yep. It will be on air though, is all, just so
That's
you
fine.
know. Yep,
That's
okay. All right, anything else? Then motion to adjourn? It's been
So
moved and seconded. All in favor?